If one moved to the sides and 3 lugim of water drained out of it, it's valid. However, if he removed it, the 3 lugim drained out of it, it isn't valid. But Reb Shimon declares it's valid because he has no intention to draw the water. If one placed jars on a roof to dry them out and they fill with rainwater, Reb Eliezer says if it is a rainy season or if there's a small amount of water in the pit, he can break the jars. Otherwise, he cannot break them. Reb Yeshua says in any case, he can either break them or tilt them, but he may not pour out the water. If a plasterer forgot his pot in a cistern and it filled with water, when the water flows over it even a little, he can break it. Otherwise, he cannot break it. So says Rabbi Eliezer, and Rabbi Yeshua says in either case, he can break it. Okay.
Okay. Tes ha-mesader kankane mitzoch habor. Okay, so he was putting out jars inside the bore, and the rain came and fell into the bore. So even if the bore, let's say, wasn't sealed properly and the water just sort of seeped through the walls of the bore, it's allowed to be broken, and the water can go out. It can go out into the bore, and it'll be a kosher mikvah since he didn't intend for them to get filled with water. Their din is not. They don't have a din of mayim shovin. And this Mishnah, of course, some say that this Mishnah over here is like Rabbi Yeshua in the previous Mishnah, because even if there's no water in the bore, they're allowed to be broken. However, there are some who interpreted that the Mishnah is that even Rabbi Eliezer agrees to this Mishnah, although Kahati doesn't explain exactly how that would work. Okay, mikvah sheyesh bo 40 sa'ah mayim v'tit. So it's got a mixture of water and plaster, 40 sa'ah of water and plaster inside this mikvah. Rabbi Eliezer Omer matbilin b'mayim v'ein matbilin b'tit. You can, well, tit plaster. Let's just say mud rather than tit, than plaster. It's a more of a realistic case over here. Okay, so Rabbi Eliezer says you can tovel in the water, but not in the mud. Only the water is kosher. So if you're talking about 40 sa'ah, chances that it's going to be very difficult to fit a person into less than 40 sa'ah of water. But you could tovel kalim in the water, according to Rabbi Eliezer. Okay. Rabbi Yeshua Omer b'mayim u'b'tit says no, it's possible to tovel in the water and the mud. You're not going to come out very clean, but the point is not here to come out clean. The point is to come out tahor. Okay. Tit matbilin. But how thick can the mud be before before it's not considered liquid enough to tovel in? But tit shamayim tzafim al gabav. In mud that the water will float on top of it. In other words, it's so soft that even if you stacked it up on the side, it would flop back down. So basically, we're talking about that sort of that softness of mud at the bottom. What happens if the water's to the side, and the mud is actually sticky enough that it will hold as a wall on the side of the mikvah. Now that you have to tovel in the water, because the mud over there is just too thick to be considered water enough to tovel in. Okay, how thick can it be at the bottom? Okay, so we agree. So we've come to an agreement that if it's solid enough that it will pile up as a wall on the side, then it's no good. But there's still grades of mud in between. Betitcha kane yored me'elav. Divrei Rabbi Meir. So Rabbi Meir says it's got to be that if you put a reed into the mud at the bottom, it would just fall. Okay, so it's soft enough that the reed would not be able to stand upright. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, makom she'ein kaneh hamida omed. It's got to be a place where a where let's say a measuring rod would not be able to stand. So that's a little bit thicker. So he's saying that even if a thin reed would stick in the mud and stay upright, we're talking about a kaneh midah. It's got to be something a little bit heavier, and that if that falls over, then that's still fine. Abba Elazar bin Dolai Omer. Okay, another Tana who doesn't appear very often, but Elazar bin Dolai says, Makom she hamashkoles yoredis. If a plum weight would go into it, if it would sink into it, that's good enough to be soft and to be kosher for tefillah. Rabbi Eliezer Omer hayored befi chavis. The kind of the thickness of mud that if you put it on top of the opening of a barrel, it would fall through. Okay, so we're getting thicker and thicker over here. Rabbi Shimon Omer hanichnas b'shfoferes hanod. Anything that would fit through the opening of a water skin. Rabbi Elazar bar Tzadok Omer hanimdad belog. Anything that could be measured with a liquid measure, with a log measure. Okay, and the halacha, Rambam paskins the halacha here like Rabbi Yehuda, that it's something that a measuring rod would not stand up in. Okay. Perek Gimel. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Shnei Mikvaos she'ein bahem 40 sa'ah. Okay, so you got two mikvaos next to each other, and neither of them has got 40 sa'ah of water inside them. V'naflu lezeh log umechza v'lezeh log umechza. So 1.5 log fell into each one of them. Okay, both of them are still kosher because it's not yet 3 log, but they're not yet kosher mikvaos. They haven't hit the 40 log measure yet. And now there was a division between the two. There was a wall between these two pits, and then the wall broke. Nis arvu. So now these two mikvaos mix. So now what do you say? You could look at it 2 ways. You've now got 2 logim that have joined. 3 logim of mayim she'uvin that have joined together before the mikvah was kosher, or did the mikvah become 40 sa'ah and then afterwards the 3 log came in. So what Rabbi Yossi says is it's kosher. That if the shear of the minimum shear of the mikvah becomes the minimum share of the mikvah becomes whole at the same time as the 3 logim of mayim she'uvin, it's fine. This is l'kosher mipnei shelo nikra aleihem shem psul, because they never had a moment when it was called pasul and the koach the terah is stronger. So the mikvah is fine. Aval mikvah she'ein bo 40 sa'ah. If the mikvah did not have 40 sa'ah, v'naflu bo 3 logim, and then 3 logim fell into it, and then it was divided in half, it's still going to remain pasul no matter what. Even if each side subsequently fills up with kosher mikvah water, it's still going to remain pasul. Okay, it didn't ever lose it, and in order for it to lose the shem psul, it's got to be completely drained. Before, and new water has to come in. Rabbi Yeshua Makshir, שהיה רבי ישוע אומר, כל מקווה שאין בו 40 סאה, ונפלו לו 3 לוגים וחסר, אפילו קורטוב כשר, מפני שחסר לו 3 logim. So Rabbi Yeshua says that any mikvah that doesn't have 40 sa'ah and 3 login fell less a kortov, even less like a teaspoon less than the 3 log fell into them, it still remains kosher because it's missing the 3 login. So what he's saying is that if it was divided in half, then you don't have the 3 login inside it, and therefore it would still be kosher. Chachamim omrim leolam hu b'psulo. Say Chachamim they agree with is this Rabbi Yossi? With Rabbi Yossi who says that leolam hu b'psulo, it stays in the state of psul ad sheyetze mimenu melo'o ve'od. Until you've drained it to the point where there is slightly less than 3 logim of water left in the bottom of the mikveh, because then you know for sure that all that you do not, it's not possible that you have 3 logim of mayim she'ovim in the bottom. You've drained it, and whatever's in the bottom there is less than 3 login, and now you can allow to start filling again.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Good.
Okay. Back
Okay.
to Torah.
So before I forget, tomorrow I'll be back at 7:45 again. The
Oh,
regular time.
you're
Is that
okay
okay?
with 7:45?
Yeah, is that okay?
Okay. Okay, that sounds good.
Okay. Okay, Yud Aleph. One who lacks the olive press because of the presses, but they were in the olive press vessels, they were Talmud Midrash. But Meir says the olive press is Tameh. Rabbi Yehuda says the olive press is Tahor. The Shimon says if the vessels are Tahor from them, the olive press is Tameh. If the vessels are Tameh for them, the olive press is Tahor. Rabbi Yoshi says, but why are the contents of the press Tameh? Only because Amaretz are not acquainted with the tumor of movement. Presses were coming in and going out of the olive press, and there were tummy beverages in the olive press. If between the beverages and the olive press there is enough distance for them and they dry their feet on the ground, they are olives of Tahoe. In front of the presses and the grape harvests, there were tuma. They are believed to say, we did not touch it. And similarly, the children among them may go outside the entrance of the olive press and relieve themselves behind the fence, and they are deemed to be Tahoe. How far may they go and remain Tahoe? Only as far as you can still see them. With regard to olive presses and grape harvests, once he brings them into the area of the cave, it is sufficient, since these are the words of Reb Meir. Rabbi Yossi says he must stand over them until they immerse. And Reb Shimon says if they are tahor to themselves, he must stand over them until they immerse. If they are tamei to themselves, he does not have to stand over them until they immerse. Okay.
Okay. Para Yud Beis Vav.
If one sprinkles with tamei hyssop and it contains an egg volume, the water is invalidated and the sprinkling is invalidated. If he does not contain it, and it does not contain an egg's volume of water, the water is valid, but his sprinkling is invalid, and it contaminates its fellow, and its fellow contaminates its fellow, even if they are 100. One who is tahor for katos water, whose hands contracted tumah, his body is tamei, and he contaminates his fellow, and his fellow contaminates his fellow, even if they are 100. Flask of tatas water whose exterior contracted tumor, it's inside its tummy, and it contaminates its fellow, and his fellow contaminates its fellow, and even if they are 100. The bell and the clapper are considered a connection. The spindle for coarse material, one should not sprinkle on the spindle or on the wall, and if he sprinkled, it is sprinkled for flax. It is considered a connection. The hide of a crib that is fastened to rings is considered a connection, and a block is considered a connection, not for tumor and not for tara, but utensil handles which are bored are considered a connection. And Yochanan ben Nori says even if it's wedged handles. I'm sorry, even wedge handles. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, oils.
Okay. We have enough. Okay. Oils. Okay. Yud Gimel. If part of the tumor is in the house and part of it is opposite the skylight, the house becomes tummy, and whatever is opposite the tummy also becomes tummy. These are the words of Reb Meir. Reb Yehuda says the house becomes tummy, but whatever is opposite the skylight remains tahor. Reb Yossi says that the tumor is large enough that when it divided in half, it contaminates both the house and whatever is opposite the tumor, they are both tummy. If not, the house becomes tummy, and whatever is opposite the tumor is tahor. If there are two skylights, one above the other, each of the sides of a square handbreadth, and tumor is in the house, whatever is directly opposite the skylight remains tahor. The tumor is directly opposite the skylights, and the house remains tahor. The tumor is either in the house or directly opposite the skylights, and an item susceptible to tumor is placed over either the upper or the lower skylight, and everything becomes tummy. If the item is not susceptible to tumor is placed over the skylight, whatever is below the item becomes tummy, and whatever is above it remains tahor. If the skylights are smaller than a handbreadth and tumor is in the house, whatever is directly opposite the skylight remains tahor, and if the tumor is directly opposite the skylight, the house remains tahor. If tumor is in the house and the item is susceptible to tumor or not is placed over either the upper or the lower skylight, only the lower store becomes tamei. And if the tumor is directly opposite the skylight and the item susceptible to tumor is placed over either the upper or the lower skylight, everything becomes tamei. If an item is not susceptible to tumor, is placed either over either the upper or the lower skylights, only the lower story becomes tummy.
Yeah.
down to Chulin. Chulin is base. If one slaughters the two heads at one time, the slaughter is invalid. If one holds a knife in slaughter, and even if one is above and one is below, the slaughtering is valid. If he severed his head with one stroke, it is invalid. If he was slaughtering and severed the head with one stroke of the knife and measured the width of the neck, it is valid. If he's slaughtering and severed two heads with one stroke, if the knife measures the width of the neck, it's valid. When did the ruling apply? Only when he made a forward stroke but not a backward stroke, or if he made a backward stroke but not a forward stroke. If he made a forward stroke and a backward stroke, however short it was, even with a scalpel, it is valid. If a knife fell and slaughtered, even though it's slaughtered in a normal fashion, it's invalid, as it is stated, and you shall slaughter and you shall eat. Whatever you slaughter, you shall eat. And if the knife fell and he picked it up, or if his clothes fell and he picked them up, or if he sharpened the knife and became fatigued, and his companion became and slaughtered, if he paused as long as it takes to slaughter, it's invalid. And Reb Shimon says if he paused as long as it takes to examine. If one severed the esophagus until the trachea, or he severed the trachea until the esophagus, or he severed one of them and waited until the animal died, or he thrust the knife under the second organ and cut it. Yeshiva says it is never nevela. The Mikvaos says it is trefa. Yeshiva stated a general rule in the name of Yeshua. Whatever became unfit through slaughtering is nevela. Whatever was slaughtered properly, but something that else caused it to become unfit is trefa. And Reb Akiva admitted to him. I never remember seeing this person's name before.
Rabbi Yeshevav.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's a Tana, and he does pop up from time to time. Rabbi Akiva learned from him.
Nazir, Dalit. A Nazir who drank wine all day is liable to say only one set of lashes. If they said to him, don't drink, and he drank, he's liable for each one. If he shaves his head all day, if he's liable for only one set of lashes, if they said to him, don't shave, and he shaved, he's liable for each one. If he contaminated himself with the tomb of the dead all day, and he's liable to only one set of lashes. If they said to him, don't contaminate yourself, and he contaminated himself, he's liable for each one. 3 matters are forbidden to a Nazir: tumah, head shaving, and products of the grapevine. There's an aspect of great stringency to tumah and head shaving to the products of the grapevine, and that tumah and head shaving cause for forfeitures, and the products of the grapevine do not cause forfeiture. There's an aspect of great stringency for the products of the grapevine and the tumah and head shaving, and that there are no exceptions for a prohibition of the products of the grapevine, whereas there are exceptions to the prohibitions of tumah and head shaving. Where head shaving is an obligation and where there's an abandoned corpse. And there is an aspect of great stringency to tumah, that the head shaving and the tumah causes forfeiture of all the days previously observed, and one is obligated because of it to bring a sacrifice, whereas head shaving causes a forfeiture for only 30 days, and one is not obligated because of it to bring a sacrifice. What is the procedure for head shaving and tumah? He would be sprinkled on the 3rd and the 7th days, shave his head on the 7th, and bring his sacrifices on the 8th. However, if he shaved on the 8th, he brings the sacrifices on the same day. These are the words of Rabbi Akiva. Rav Tarfon said to him, what is the difference between this one and a mitzvah? He had said to him, this one's purification is dependent on the day, while mitzvah's while the mitzvah's purification depends on the shaving and cannot bring a sacrifice unless the sun has set on him. Okay. And Orla. If the oven was heated with shelter of oil and the bread was baked in it, the bread must be burnt. If it became mixed up with others, it becomes void, boiling 200. If one has bundles of fenugreek of kilei hakarim, they must be burnt. If they became mixed up with others, it must be burnt. So says Rav Meir, but the commentator becomes voided in 1 and 200. Rav Meir used to say, whatever is customary to count renders it holy. But the sages say only 6 things render holy. The Rebbe Akiva says 7, and they are the following: perik nuts, pomegranates, abadin, seal jars, beet shoots, cabbage heads, and Greek gourds. The Rebbe Akiva says also household loaves. Whatever is liable to orla is orla, and the kilei hakayim is kilei hakayim. Okay, akarim.
Good.
All right, so Mr. 7:45. Okay.
Let's see you tomorrow. Okay.
Bye.